We're living our truth now. Crystal, what?
Krista who?
Twisted-delphian?
Did you say Christian dolphin? So are you from Philadelphia?
Welcome to the Life After Leaving podcast, an Ex-Christadelphian podcast. Hello, heathens, and welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Zinnia. Today's guest is Sylvia. Thank you for joining us today, Sylvia.
Thanks for having me, Zinnia.
So today I'd like to hear your story of becoming an ex-Christadelphian. So we'll go through your whole experience, starting with growing up, going through what the process of leaving looked like for you, and where you're at now, and anything you'd like to share with people who might be going through a similar journey. So before we get started, could you share what region of the world you grew up in Christadelphia?
Victoria, British Columbia, Canada.
Wow. Our first Canadian. Glad to finally have a Canadian on the podcast. And how long has it been since you left the Christadelphians?
It's been 30 years. 33 years.
Oh, wow. All right. You ready to get back into it? Think about things you probably haven't thought about in a while?
I think about it a lot. I write about it, and so it's something that's always there for me.
Okay. All right. So were you born into the group?
I was. Both sides of my family, my mom and my dad. I think on one side of my family, at least, that I know about probably dates back to John Thomas's day in England. The other side of my family may be that far back in the States too. I'm not quite so sure of my mother's side of the family. Okay, but either way, a very long time and really deeply rooted since it's on both sides. It's in my DNA.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And can you tell us a bit about some memories you have of your childhood being raised Christadelphian?
Yeah, I had a fabulous childhood. It was a good childhood. I had very, very good parents, and I was the youngest of a big family, and we had an acreage, and we went to all the things at the church. So I had a ready-made group of friends. I fit in well with school, so I was kind of a friendly kind of kid, so I didn't really have much trouble that way. So I had a strong childhood. And my memories of childhood, it was all about the meeting. That's what we called it. It was all about doing Bible readings twice a day. It was all
twice a day.
Morning, my mother would sit with our family and she would do the readings, the first reading, while we had breakfast.
Okay.
And then there would always be, after the readings, a family discussion.
Okay.
And in my family, my father and my mother often disagreed with each other. And my older siblings kind of were on either side of it. So there was extremely healthy back and forth debate. So that's what I was raised with. And then in the evening, we did the Bible readings and everybody read, the 5 verses, around. And then
took turns around the room. Okay.
Yeah. So I left, I was close to 40 when I left. So how many times had I read the Bible? Like 20 times, at least 25 times through. Stem to stern. Yeah.
Yeah. And always using the Bible companion method, it sounds like too.
Yes. Which is an interesting, kind of frame to put it into. But yes, that's what we did. Yeah.
Okay. And did you have a lot of cousins at your meeting as well?
Oh, yeah. They were all my friends, all my cousins.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice.
For a child, it absolutely was. There's all the other side to that, what that all means to you, but I have no complaints of being a child, no.
Were there a lot of events for young people then? It sounds like there was a lot of you there. Were there a lot of other meetings with young kids in the area for you to mingle with?
Yeah, so Victoria is on the West Coast, and Victoria, Vancouver, Vernon, Nanaimo, they weren't like real close, but they're close. And there was a lot. And then the northern states like Seattle, Portland. So yes, there was a big crowd of strong Christadelphians in the region. Lots of youth gatherings and, Bible schools and the like.
What Bible schools did you usually go to out that way?
So the Silver Star Bible School was the big one.
And where is that?
That's in Vernon.
Where's that?
Vernon, come on. Vernon is in British Columbia. And if you're American, it's kind of in central British Columbia. It's a
Okay.
beautiful, fabulous place with lakes and ski hills and
Oh, that sounds lovely.
yeah. So lots of your listeners will know Silver Star. It's a big Bible school.
Mm-hmm.
And we started, I was part of starting a new Bible school out there
Really?
on Shawnigan Lake, which was more close to Victoria. And then as a kid, I went to Idlewild. That was big. That was a big moment.
Yeah, I've been to that
My
one.
favorite Bible school of all time ever is Calaveras.
Where's that one? I don't know that one either.
It's in sort of northern east, not really northern, but east California, up in the hills, and it's an unamended Bible school, and it was just like the most fun. Mm-hmm. I went to lots of Bible schools.
Were you formerly part of the amended group and sometimes went to unamended events? Okay.
Yeah. My dad was Berean at some point. My uncle, my mother's family were unamended, but we were amended. But, well, I guess my family had not a really big problem with either one.
I mean, I guess that makes sense then, especially if they had married each other. If at that point they were of different, like, subgroups of Christadelphian at the time. Yeah, that makes the most sense. Yeah, Berean hasn't even come up really on the podcast yet. There's no one that I'm aware of yet who's reached out who identifies with that group. So I imagine it's pretty small.
Yeah, what I know about them, because my dad wasn't a Berean when I was a kid. He'd already left that and joined the amendeds, but they're pretty hardcore from what I imagine. They're pretty black and white about things. At least that was the takeaway from my father.
Yeah, and I almost wonder, is that the case, or is that his experience? Because I assume he probably just went to like one ecclesia mostly for that. Like, I wonder how widespread that was.
Maybe not even an ecclesia, maybe just a few people.
Yeah.
Because a few people. So
because a few people can make a big difference. Yeah. All right. So, did you ever get baptized?
Oh, yes, I got baptized.
I mean, you made it to 40 in the group, so I figured at some point it would be very surprising if you didn't.
I was going to be a little hippie kid. I was, because I'm 70 coming in a couple of weeks. It's my birthday, just saying.
So wonderful.
I'm a late 60s kid, right? I was a kid in the mid to late 60s, and you either had to be a little hippie kid or, whatever else was going on. But I met my best friend and the love of my life when I was 15, and I married him when I was 17.
Oh, wow.
And, yes. And he loved my parents, and he liked the meeting. Okay. And he really liked going. And I was kind of, when I met him, thinking maybe he was my way out. And it turned out that I was his way in. Yeah.
Wow.
So we got married when I was 17.
And so I assume you met in school or something like that, if he hadn't grown up in it, or?
No, he was quite a bit older than me. He was 7 years older than me.
Okay, so how did you guys meet?
A friend, and
okay,
just in the neighborhood, right? In the.
Okay, so you were in the same community. Okay, like outside where you lived. Yeah,
he was not in the meeting, and he liked it. He liked it, and it's a long story, that one. He's a First Nations, what we call, or a American Indian, what you would call.
Yeah, native to the area prior to white settlement.
Yeah. And so that was that, and my mother loved him, and she let me marry him when I was 17. And my dad sort of reluctantly said, well, whatever mother says, we'll go.
Because wouldn't they have had to sign off on the marriage certificate or something because you were a minor? Okay, yeah. Can I ask, what religion did he grow up with?
Well, he was reluctantly a Catholic, but he was a First Nations man, and they, the whole story that you've heard of Catholicism. So that was not a nice experience for him or his family.
Yeah, so. I believe it, because from what I've read with history, a lot of it was forced conversion of giving up your native beliefs and having to believe what the white settlers wanted you to believe.
That's right. Yeah. So but once you're a Catholic, you're always a Catholic. So They will never let you go off the list. Never.
Oh, no.
Christie's got it all wrong. They try to get people off the list. The Catholics, they want you to stay on the list forever.
Okay.
That's the way they get their numbers.
And I guess that's what they want. So I guess that's why they don't care if people only come once a year. They're like,
No.
all right, we can still claim you as
That's
one
right.
of ours. That's
That's
fine.
Right. That's right.
Oh,
That's right.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so did he go to your baptism?
Well, he got baptized first.
Oh my God, that's a twist.
Yeah, he got baptized first. So I was this little, would-be aspiring little hippie girl, and he came in.
I want a picture of this. You sound adorable.
Exactly. And he was just this beautiful man. He was like my best friend, and he loved my family, and he learned how to read by doing the Bible readings with us, because he went to a school that only marginally ever taught anybody how to read, and he came out of it illiterate.
Oh my God, that's awful.
He learned to read 5 verses at a time with my mother and my father and me. So it was pretty remarkable. It was pretty cool looking back at it. But
it sounds like a pioneer story almost to me, because I hear about like the little kids before like libraries, they would learn to read using the Bible.
That's right.
That was what they did.
That's right. And so he got baptized, and you know what? I got married. He wasn't baptized when we got married, but he was really interested in it. So somehow my mother decided that it was better that we got married than didn't. And it didn't matter that we weren't baptized. My husband-to-be was all into it. And my uncle married us. It was kind of a drama at the meeting, because he had a license and he wasn't supposed to marry people that were outsiders. So they had a lot of discussion about whether we were outsiders or insiders. And my beautiful uncle said, it doesn't matter, I'm going to marry them anyway. So he did. So this little girl, I was 17, got married to my love and my best friend. And so I remember waking up thinking, oh my goodness, I'm married.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I'm married. But, and everybody does that. You probably did that if you're married. You woke up and went, oh my gosh, I'm married. What the heck? I got married. But about however many months later, he got baptized.
Okay.
And I remember lying in bed just literally hyperventilating.
Why?
Going, oh my gosh. Now, because I knew all the background of it, he's baptized, I'm not, what is our life going to look like? And so I followed him maybe a year later. I followed him and got baptized.
If he hadn't gotten baptized, do you think you would have gotten baptized? No.
No. It's hard to say that, because as we go through this more, I became a real Christy. I did. I became a real Christy. But no, I probably wouldn't have. No. At least not, certainly not when I was 18. No.
Could you tell us a little bit more about like where you were at that time? Because it sounds like there was doubt there. Like, what were you feeling when you were kind of debating that? Because you said already, like, he could have been a ticket out of there. So I'm surprised you would say that when a year later you're getting baptized. So it sounds like something was there, like some seed.
So I thought he was maybe the ticket out of there. It was probably 2 or 3 years later that I got baptized. But yeah, so I was a pretty, I'd say it kind of crassly, but I was a pretty smart kid when I was in Christadelphia.
That's nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah, I was good at it. I was really good at it. Like, I knew what it was about. I was raised in a family that I was well taught about Christadelphia. I didn't think, oh, I don't believe this. Oh, I don't like this. I just was still a kid, and it's like, oh, there's the world out there to do something with.
Okay.
Although, I mean, like I said, I'm 70, and in those days, being a girl in the Christadelphians, there wasn't a lot of ambition, but I did think I was going to, maybe become a teacher and do something, and so I can't really say either way. Probably what I would say is I was 17. And what do you think? I was a kid. I was a teenager.
Yeah.
I was having a good time. My
Yeah.
husband was a really good guy. He was a really nice guy, and we had fun.
Mm-hmm.
So then I got married, and then he joined the church, and then I really did go, okay, I can see that my future is, where it's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to go where I might have gone, but it wasn't a terrible um, switch for me to say
Mm-hmm.
I'll join. I'll join.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes sense. It was a
yeah,
little more vague than it was sounding before. Just
yeah.
like, I'm young, I'm exploring my options, I'm thinking about
That's right.
things. And some of that natural rebelliousness of like, I need to stretch my wings a little bit kind of
Yeah,
feeling.
yeah.
Okay. And did you get more involved in the ecclesia after your baptism? And how old were you when you got baptized?
I must have been maybe 19.
Okay.
19.
Yeah.
But I was old for 19. I was married. I quit school in grade 11 um,
Oh my goodness.
and got, yeah.
You were a
I'm
kid.
now,
You're like, I don't need no education.
no, you didn't. You didn't. You're a girl. And you didn't. And there
Wow.
was no
Yeah.
problem with that at all.
Yeah. And back in
No,
those times, a little different. Yeah.
it was. I now have, just saying, I now have a PhD. I'm Dr. Sylvia Olson. So it didn't stay like that.
I love it. We are here for it.
I got my doctorate when I was 60. So
What did you get your doctorate in, by the way?
I'm a historian.
Oh, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
Yeah.
And also that you got it at 60. Amazing.
Yeah, I got a number of degrees before that through my,
Mm-hmm.
it took me, years. My whole life has been learning. Yeah. Anyway, that was all kind of chaotic, but I did get baptized.
Mm-hmm. So then you're all in good standing again. Everyone can calm down at your meeting who was all in a tizzy about it.
Yeah, no, that's right. Well, it didn't actually calm down because I had married, and I'm using this word in Canada. This is not a good word, but I married an Indian, and that was not cool. That was not cool. And
wow,
the people in the meeting were accepting some of them and not accepting others, and some of them accepting and lovely, but it was not a good time at all for really racist notions.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't good. It wasn't a good time. It was the early 1970s was just bad time.
Well, hearing about what schooling had been like for him, it does not surprise me. And being someone who's interested in history as well, I'm somewhat familiar with some of the way things were. But that's really unfortunate to hear of all the different hurdles that he had going on in life, to have to deal with racism when finding this spiritual community, as well as all of the other obstacles that were put in place by society at large for someone of a different race.
True story. Just like you said it. That's right.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm ashamed to hear about that. And then I remember we had emailed a little bit last year, and you had mentioned that you were involved with Truth Corps.
Yeah.
So we should talk a little bit about what it is, and then maybe you can tell me a bit about how you got involved in it.
Yeah. So I joined the big Christadelphian church in Victoria, which had maybe 150 people, which is a big meeting.
Yeah.
And I didn't like it. I was always a radical right from when I was young. It's funny how you think you're a radical in the Christadelphians. You don't have to be very radical to be radical when you're in this little tiny.
No, if you've got that top button unbuttoned, they're like, oh my goodness, look at that rebel.
I know. It's like, it's so easy. And it's so much fun because you can just be totally radical doing things that are so insignificant.
Yeah.
My husband and I and a couple of other couples started a new meeting.
Yeah, tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah,
you mentioned that before, too. How
Yeah,
do you just start a new meeting?
There was 6 of us, 3 couples, and we all had little kids. And I was really into it. See, this was a real driver. It was a very cool thing to do. It's like, we're going to start this new meeting. It's going to be cool. We're going to do all this stuff with kids, and we did. We did. It was called the Saanich meeting. It's still called the Saanich meeting. Huh. So there's 2 meetings in Victoria, the one we started and the big one. And we started our own Bible school, Shawnigan Lake Bible School. And we were just popping. Like, lots of stuff going on.
Yeah.
And so my father had been a leader in Truth Corps several several years, he had been the leader of Truth Corps. And Truth Corps is, for those people who don't know, but lots of Christadelphians will know, I think it still goes on, does it?
I checked, and they do still have an active website, and they're still accepting applications.
Okay. So 6 or 10 young people commit their summer to Truth Corps. And then I think they have maybe 3 destinations. So they come to a little meeting who has prepared some work for them to do. And then they come there and spend 2 weeks at each place. Our meeting wanted it. We wanted to have kids because we were kid focused for our youth groups and our Sunday school. And Truth Corps actually stayed in our house. And we just had this little wee house. And these 6 kids from, I remember kids from Eastern States and Southern California and the Toronto area in Canada. And they came and they stayed with us for 2 weeks. And it was fun. We had a really good time with them.
So did you guys just have them stay with you once, or did you do that a couple times?
No, we had them stay once for 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yep.
Any stories about that one guy who I know who went there and stayed with you?
One guy who went there and stayed with me?
My dad.
Did he?
We emailed about it. My dad.
That's who you are. That's right.
Yep, and we chatted about it. He had the mustache then. It was before he married my mom, and he was raised in the Christadelphians. That was something that was on the table for him to do. And I had kind of forgotten that because I know he had told me growing up, like, oh yeah, I did Truth Corps. And I just kind of filed it back there of like, okay, something my dad told me he did in the 80s or whenever. And then we were emailing and you're like, oh, you have the same last name as someone who stayed at my house and did Truth Corps in like 1980 something, whatever it was. And we realized it was my dad.
That's right.
Bleep. Yeah. But I'll bleep out his name for his privacy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But
there you go. That's crazy. He did stay with us.
Yep.
They weren't that much younger than they were younger than me, but I was young. So
yeah, he's only upper 60s now, so you guys are pretty close in age, I would think. Yeah.
So it was fun. It was fun for them too, and an experience. Who gets to go somewhere for 2 weeks and stay in some random person's house on an Indian reserve? I mean, seriously, it's kind of a weird cultural event. And
I didn't realize you guys lived. So do you guys move into more of where he grew up then, like on the reserve? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
I lived there for 35 years.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So, it was an energetic time. I was totally involved in trying to make the world a better place. That's what I was doing.
Okay.
And I liked it. And I was a hard worker, and my husband was too, and the people in our little meeting were, and so for numbers of years, I was really active, really doing what I could to make it work.
You definitely did a lot. You're the first person also who has just made their own meeting. And it's like a lot of times it's like, oh, it's a split. We have different, values and interpretations of the Bible. But this was like, oh, we just want to do it a different style. And you guys can join us. Like, we have no problem with you. It sounds, which is nice that it was an open thing. Did you bring any like ideals to your new ecclesia too? That was something else I wanted to ask you about. It's like, what made it different, to you? Why make the different meeting too?
Yeah, that's really a good question, because it wasn't a split. Although once we went, some people from the old meeting were all kind of cheesed off, right? Because what's wrong with us? And
I mean, they love their drama.
And we were young, and we were idealistic, and we were wanting to let go of some of the restrictions. So we were looser around the edges, which always kind of makes people uncomfortable.
But in what way? Like not wearing head coverings?
Oh, no, don't even go there. No, but wearing head coverings only to the memorial meeting.
Okay. Rebels.
I know we totally were. So we were the meeting where the women would wear, pants, and where women freely spoke in the Bible classes, not anywhere
Okay.
else.
Not on the Sundays. Okay.
No, but we were just, you know what we were? We were just a lot more fun.
I like it.
We were,
That would be my selling point. You'd have me sold if I was a
we,
Christadelphian in that area. Like, yeah, I'm gonna
we
go to the fun
were,
one.
we were more fun, and that's how I stayed for so long because I thought that was such good work, and it was
Hmm.
like, wow, Christadelphia can be done in a more human. We were more human,
That's
way more,
really nice to hear, and I think there'll
way
be
more human.
people that are happy to hear that because I think there's definitely certain groups within Christadelphia that are still so rigid and traditional and conservative that it is kind of suffocating for some
Yeah,
people. And for people who do want to have fun and enjoy their experience in
yeah,
a religious setting, those people often get a lot of criticism and hostility, which is such a shame.
yeah,
And it definitely sounds like you can relate to a degree with some of the personalities in that other meeting in Victoria.
yeah. But we just happily went about doing what we did. We really did. We had
Yeah,
a
good for
really
you.
we had a positive attitude towards it, so we didn't really get overly burdened down by their. A couple of other couples joined us, an older couple
Okay.
who was always kind of off the edge of the mainstream
Mm-hmm.
Christadelphia, so they fit in really, really well. They were
Aw.
really good people. And then my dad and mom joined, and my dad was much more controversial. He always was. He was,
What did
but
he do?
oh, he would say things that
Oh,
that he wasn't supposed to say, and he also was a very happy, energetic Christadelphian, and that just it just doesn't always fit.
he wasn't solemn enough.
No,
Is that
and he brought into our family all the rabbi tax, and you know that guy. That was him. So
okay?
anyway, he joined too. So this little meeting was it was pretty good. We thought,
Yeah,
hey, we're doing good work. We're doing good Christadelphian work.
yeah. That makes more sense that you were able to stay longer when
Yep.
you helped create a community where you could thrive. That's pretty cool to hear, and I'm sure some people will be a little inspired by that too.
Yep. Yep.
Do you ever hear about how that ecclesia is doing? Have they kept up the fun energy that you're aware of?
No,
Oh well.
no, they they
Oh,
they haven't.
okay.
That's just that, and I'm going to say that. And some people that are in it might think they have or whatever, and that's fine with them.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. I have started some other organizations in my life, and you look at them and you think, here was the reason, here was the
Mm-hmm.
motivation,
Yeah.
was to make, in quotes, the truth, more alive in your being, in your soul, whatever you want to say. No, I don't think that they're any different now than the other meeting. They're well
Mm-hmm.
established, and and people go and they must like it and whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't see any marked difference like it was when it started.
Okay. That's interesting to hear because I think there's some people with that energy that you had still within the group, but it's interesting to hear what direction they go with conformity. Does it move towards more progressive or does it go back and kind of revert to more traditionalistic
Yeah, yeah,
setting? And it's interesting to hear. I was just curious what direction it kind of went in
yeah.
and it shifted right back. Interesting.
To some degree, at least. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
to some degree. And again, you're not an active member either.
Yeah,
And, so we're not speaking directly for them or anything. But I was just curious, since you were part of that pioneering group who made it.
was too.
Yeah, do you have any other memorable stories from when you were Christadelphian that you wanted to share while you were still in it?
Well, one of the things that I was thinking about this morning is in my journey when I was a teenager,
Mm-hmm.
and probably even before that. And as I said to you, that I was raised in this family that actively every day of my life had debates over religious things.
Mm-hmm.
We did. That's what we did. That's what my birth family did.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an interesting kind of upbringing to have. And when
Mm-hmm.
we were in youth groups in the day, so you got to think of this as the 60s, we had a brother from Ontario who wrote a book called Rested Scripture.
I remember hearing about that one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so
Rested with a W, right?
yes, that's right. So it came out right when I was a young, I have to look and see when it came out, but it came out when I was a young teenager.
Yeah.
And this guy traveled around I mean, I can say his name because he published this book, and so
Yeah, his name is tied to it. Yeah.
so he's from the Ontario region. His name was Ron Abel, and he was a really dynamic guy. And he wrote this book, and Wrested Scripture was about how all the other Christian groups were all whacked. They were all wrong, 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 wrong. And I thought, you know what? I come from a pretty cool tradition because our seminal book is called Christendom Astray. So my group,
Robert Roberts' book,
told the rest of Christianity that they were all whacked, that they were all wrong. So this is kind of like my tradition, is telling people how they're all wrong, right?
Yeah, that's not uncommon with Christadelphians.
Yeah, and wow, I was so good at it. So good at it. So in our youth groups, we would do role plays. That's pretty cool, right? Pretty fun. Role plays. You be the Mormon and I'll be the Christadelphian, right? You be the JW and I'll be the Christadelphian, and I'll tell you how wrong you are.
Wow. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, I think that was probably not just your ecclesia that did that, you know?
Yeah. No,
it's very
it was
Christadelphian.
part of the movement. And we started out on that foot with Christendom Astray. So,
okay.
So that's important, because that is the kind of approach that we had, is that we are right and you are wrong.
With a side of confrontation to it, too. It's like, we're ready to fight you over this, that we are better and that's more correct than you.
Yeah. Just waiting for you to say something so we can correct you.
Oof, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm not, proud to say I was really good at that, but I was really good at that. And so I think that that's an important aspect of my upbringing. And like I said, at a certain time, the late 60s, and in a certain place, Western Canada, I don't know if Christadelphia was doing that everywhere, but that's what we were doing here.
I mean, that sounds very familiar to CYC for me in the early aughts on the East Coast. And, there's a number of people who have said, like, being in elementary school, they felt like they were better than everybody else. So I think that goes with that a little bit, like hand in hand of we are right is kind of that energy of being better. Like, we're better because we're smarter. We figured it out. We have the truth.
So I have a memory of that. I petitioned our youth conference. We had a big Easter weekend youth conference. And I said, I have taught Sunday school for years, and I want to teach the kids at this youth conference. And they said, no, we have to have men teaching. We can't have women. And I said, no, okay, then give me a group of teenagers that aren't baptized. I want to teach them. Because they said, no, we can't. But because I was like that, as you can imagine, I was like that. I said, no, you need to have a woman teaching. So they said, we'll get you a group of girls. Okay. They've never done this before. We'll separate girls out and you can teach the girls. I said, okay, I'll have the girls. Give me something. Like, I'm fed up with there being no women teaching these kids. Women should be part of teaching kids. Anyway, so they gave me a class of about 15 young girls between 13 and 15. Nobody was baptized. Just the girls.
Wow.
Right?
So many levels down, just the sexism, and then and then the hierarchy of baptized versus not baptized. They're like, you can have the bottom of the barrel people. Wow. It's always crazy when you see it like that, and just remember after being out of it for so long, I'm like, oh, wow, we really were like secondary citizens, whether you are a woman or baptized. And if you're both, you're way down there. But I am glad you stuck up for yourself like that.
I did, and I got this class. And now I'm in this class with all these 15 girls, all these bright-eyed little girls. And I said to them, so what is your biggest challenge in your life? I'm not speaking religiously. What is your biggest challenge? And let's go around and let's talk about your challenges that you feel being a young girl, right? Okay. Honestly, out of 15, 12 of them said their biggest challenge was being an example. And I said, an example of what?
Yeah.
An example of Jesus.
Oh, goodness.
I said, "You're not even baptized. What do you mean?
That's a lot of pressure.
How are you trying to be an example?" Well, for all the other kids at school, they see me and I have to be an example for them. And I'm like,
Oh,
oh my gosh, girls.
that's a lot of
No,
pressure.
you don't. No, you don't. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
that was the last time a woman taught, and it was the last time I ever got. And I was on my way out by then. I said, "Oh, holy man, this is like so, so wrong." And that goes to what you were saying, is that we have to show the world what goodness is all about, right? What the hell? Anyway, so that is part of what you were just saying. It's like, so we're right, and we're 13, and somehow our biggest job in our life is to be an example to everybody else about how they should be. That is just, it sets my teeth on edge.
No wonder so many of us have so many like mental health problems and like have issues that we've recognized from our development, where we're like, I think everyone else was like doing these other developmental things at that time, like figuring out who they were, while as we're trying to like model Jesus.
That's right.
Like it's very interesting. I think a psychologist would really start talking if we hit that topic.
When any of us go and meet the psychologist, they go, "Oh, okay, I get it. I hear you."
Yeah. Right. There's some problems way from the beginning in your life.
That's right. That's right.
Wow. That's so disappointing too, to hear about the outcome of that was the end of that too. Because you did try.
Oh, yeah.
And they were not willing to work with you and meet you with that at all. So again, seems like shutting down attempts to try to be a little kinder to the people there. It's just, I mean, I think because it was girls only, it sounds like you really were able to go a little deeper with them than I ever remember going at like a Bible school or something like that.
Because you didn't have Auntie Bub teaching you. That's what my name was in those days. I was everybody's auntie, and it was like, I could feel, even though I was still in, I could feel the pressure on the girls, and the sort of inhumanity of the expectations. So yeah. Anyway, that was significant. By that time in my life, see, our little meeting, they allowed me to teach everybody. I taught the boys and the girls, right?
Were they baptized or unbaptized?
Yeah. If any of them had got baptized, it wouldn't have mattered. I still could have taught them. But
okay.
So by that time, I realized what I was teaching the kids was not full out Christie doctrine. And the more I taught, the more I realized you are really off. You are not right down the middle of this gig. you aren't.
So you had veered off of the lines you were supposed to be repeating, huh?
Yeah, I could tell. Yeah. That's, yeah.
I have a feeling it was probably more of an empathetic or less black and white approach, maybe. That would be my guess of what you did.
The less black and white approach. You just leave that. I left room for all kinds of nuance.
they hate that. What were you thinking? Kids, think about it and figure it out. And they're just like, no, you're supposed to tell them they're wrong.
That's right.
This is what they believe. There's no other options. And
I would open some of the things that I was teaching saying, so this is what I think right now. Yeah. For now, I think this still works, but it might not always be the case.
I think if they were doing like a litmus test for who's a Christadelphian or not, I think that phrase would be on the litmus test for who's not going to fit in. Yeah. I think that right there, allowing so much nuance and room for growth is, I think, both beautiful and healthy, but I think also very uncommon and almost like a little thing that they'd want to like whack back down and be like, no, stay on script.
That's right. Can't let that happen, because who knows where it leads.
I mean, if you have the truth, there's no room for nuance or growth because it's set. The dogma is set. We can't change it. And that's the other thing with not having a leader is like, we've all agreed to what Dr. Thomas and Roberts and a few of the guys with like splits and stuff. Some of the influential guys were like, that's it. You're not able to make it personal and be like, well, here's my own spin on it. Because they'll kick you out. You'll get disfellowshipped. Be like, I believe in a personal devil. Oh, no, get out.
Yeah. Talking about black and white. That one's black and white.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. These are awesome stories to hear. Anything else from your time as a Christadelphian before we switch over to talk about the process of leaving? It sounds like we're already starting to get to this transition time.
I've said it earlier, but somebody like me stays in because I created this space for myself where I really did believe that I was doing things differently. And I really did believe that it was worthwhile to do things differently. And I was quite happy to be radical. I mean, really in air quotes, radical, because so I was not the woman that stood in the kitchen with the women talking about making Jello salad, which they did all the time in those days. Trust me, they did.
There's a lot of Jello salad. I've seen that.
It was the Jello salad era. So I always was in the living room talking about Daniel or Ezekiel or Revelation or whatever with the men. So that was me. That was, and I was intellectually stimulated enough. There was enough that to keep me saying, hey, no, this is a better way to look at it. I was always, that kept me energized. It kept me involved, and it kept me believing that this thing that we believed in could be a real cool thing. It kept me doing that because I was active all the time trying to come to some new understandings or to some better ways of doing things. And it just kept me going.
That makes sense. It definitely fits with you, with where you ended up going with your education too.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned when you were teaching that young group of girls that you were already kind of getting towards the edge. What was going on around that time with you? What were the first signs that you were starting to move in the direction of the door?
There's two things, and I'm really fascinated by the ex-Christadelphians in the group on the Facebook that we read about, and there's lots of reasons why people I don't try to categorize them, but for some people it's the people, like the people have been rude to them or not accepted their sexuality or not accepted their whatever. So that wasn't me, because I was kind of in the center of the people, and I was like I was an accepting kind of person. So that wasn't me.
Which is very fortunate. That's good.
Yeah. And I really have a lot of respect for people where that's not their experience. But what came to me when I'm teaching is, to begin with, it started with, I am more open. So that alone, you think, okay, I'm not really in the mainstream of Christadelphian because I'm much more open to people. If somebody is divorced, or if somebody's an alcoholic, or if somebody is troubled, or somebody doesn't live up to our expectations, that was fine with me. So I thought, you're not the mainstream, but it wasn't enough to get rid of the whole thing. I just kept, kind of being that.
Doing your own version of it and being very open-hearted with people.
And so I did, though, come face to face with it when I'm teaching the kids, because I sort of had to say that real tight line way that, the Christies are, well, that's garbage. I mean, I had to say that to them, right? There's this whole other way that we can be, and it's blah, blah, blah. But that didn't go over the edge for me or for the Christies, because that was just, in fact, you know what? I think people that do that kind of legitimate their Christies. They go, oh yeah, well, we have people like her. She's, we have people that are really out there doing good work, so we you kind of
tokenize almost.
What's that?
It almost sounds like tokenizing.
Yeah. And it makes the people that don't do that kind of feel better, because we got people that are like that, they're so
the exceptions, but they can use that to make themselves look better or feel better. Right.
Yeah. Exactly what you're saying. Yeah. So that's how I started to see myself, and I could play that role, and then I'm just going to embrace that, and then I can do freaking anything I want. Right. But that, that was the start of it.
That's a lot of work too for you, because it tells you there's no support behind you, really.
No. People kind of like tolerate you, kind of. Yeah.
It sounds more like that. Yeah. Of like, we're not going to outright stop her, but we're
That's
not going to encourage her.
right. Oh, you got it exactly.
Okay. I'm doing good. I'm listening.
God forbid anybody encourage her. That's
Well, that's the
awesome.
thing. It sounds like you were very alone in that in general. And you did have the couples with starting the new meeting and
We
all, but
did.
it
We
sounds
did.
like you were still kind of out in front doing your own thing. And it
But those
wasn't
other couples,
catching on, like
the little
wider.
the little meeting was like that though too.
Yeah.
It gave us a space. It gave us
Okay.
a space to be that. Yeah. That's why it went on for so long with me, because it was a
Hmm.
really good space.
That makes sense.
But
So what happened next?
but then I realized that it wasn't just kind of the humanity of it that I saw differently. It
Okay.
was the doctor. It was the
Hmm.
doctrines.
Okay. Yeah. That's probably like the other group you were saying of people who leave who are like, this doctrine doesn't make sense.
That's right. And then it
Hmm.
started to be real doctrine for me. And then, okay, I'm going to explain to these kids, and they're 15 or 16-year-old kids, the Trinity. And I would say, yeah, you know what? Some people personify the Trinity, personify God, personify, Jesus, personify. And then they call it the Trinity. And like,
Hmm.
so, and in fact, and
I thought
in,
you were supposed to be fighting Catholics,
I
not
know,
telling them how you understand them.
I know. And then I would say things like, actually, people learn better that way. They learn better when we personify things. People have been personifying things forever. In fact, in the Bible, things are personified. We just decide what we personify and what we don't, and that
And when
kind
it's
of lost.
literal or not. Yeah.
Yeah. So then, you start realizing you're over the edge, and really, I started being over the edge. I started looking at doctrine, which I had been a doctrine fanatic, prophecy fanatic for years. That was my
Ooh.
thing.
Okay.
And you know what I did? You know what? I know exactly what I did. I
Tell
did
me.
what I did so well as a teenager is I pulled arrested scripture on myself.
Wow, it went full circle.
I did. I put
Yeah.
Christadelphians on the same table as I put
Hmm.
the other groups.
See, that was your mistake. They were supposed to be up here, held
I
to a
know.
higher standard where they never get evaluated. You only put the spotlight on everyone else.
And I put them through the same ringer, the
Yeah.
exact same ringer. And you know what happened? They didn't hold up any better than those other churches, not one bit.
Was there a few examples in particular that you still remember that you would be willing to share?
Of doctrines falling apart.
Yeah, things that stuck out to you that where you really like it woke you up to something.
I decided one summer that I was going to read the Bible stem to stern, starting in Genesis. Not
Okay.
with that. I started to get critical, sort of wary of the Bible. It jumbles it all up. It puts it here and there and
With
everywhere.
the Bible companion method, you
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Okay.
And I
Yep.
thought, hey, wait a minute. That's a manipulative tool, and it doesn't
Ooh.
actually allow you to be in charge of your own investigation.
It is interesting that every Christadelphian is basically reading the exact same portion every day. Like you can ask any Christadelphian in like, January what they're reading. They'll be like, obviously like Genesis, Psalms, and Matthew. Like what else would I be reading? It is
And
kind of crazy. It's like it's such on a massive scale around the world. They're all reading the same thing at the same time.
and it jumbles the Bible.
But that's what they do because they take it verse by verse and combine it together into like a soup instead of being like, oh, here's a book.
That's right. So I thought, hey, wait a minute, that's not working for me.
Mm-hmm.
The jumble has not allowed me to actually get a grip on this whole thing. It sends me all over, right?
Well, for me, I didn't realize when I was really little that it was just a Christadelphian thing. And so it was funny to realize that it is just us. And then you almost ask, why is it just us using this method? And then obviously I learned, and we talked about it in the Robert Roberts episode, how he invented it and why he invented it to help him read and just kind of make it digestible just to get through the amount he wanted to get through because it was about quantity over quality more so. But it is interesting now, having talked to biblical scholars and talking to people with a lot of education, those people with that perspective of looking at works like literature and history are like, no, that makes no sense.
That's not a good way. And I wasn't even a historian by then.
Yeah.
But I was in my head because I looked at that and said, this is not a good way. And the only way I'm going to understand the Bible for myself is to not use that and to just start and read a book. I'm going to read a book. Then I'm going to read another book. And I'm going to read another book. So it was big. It was a big, and I remember sitting on my porch and having out of body experiences of the walls falling down on me,
Wow.
and just the whole thing was falling apart. And prophecy, oh my God.
Ooh, tell me about it.
Yeah, it was like, come on, right? Like, seriously, are we in the Ottoman Empire? Um, yeah, so it just one thing at a time. And then you know what I thought? Okay, stop. Because I was really getting ill, actually, because it was falling
Well,
apart.
it is stressful. Yeah, that's like a very life-threatening moment to
It was.
realize that your stability, your foundation for your life is suddenly feeling very fluid.
Yeah, so it's falling down. And then
Yeah.
I thought, just read David. Just read David. Just read the Psalms. Because when I was a young girl, I always thought David was sexy. David.
Well, he's supposed to be handsome. He can dance.
Oh, man.
He's got a lot of skill with women. I don't know.
And he got to sleep with 2 virgins when he was an old man. I mean, come on. This is a man who's got a little bit of sex appeal, right? So read David.
And he's in touch with his feminine side probably because he's got close man friends he can talk about his emotions with. Come on.
I think so. And he was a poet.
Yeah, he could sing. He liked music.
Sing and he could dance. Wasn't that the guy? I mean, he was my favorite. So I read the Psalms and I just thought, okay, David, bring me back, boy, bring me back.
Ground me. Come on, David.
And then I read it and I got just cheesed off because it was like,
he finally gave you
what
the ick.
David's saying in the Psalms is, get them, Lord, before they get me. Save my butt, Lord, because they're after me. It just over and over and over. And it was like, oh my God, I didn't realize that this is what this was about. Because we would just read a little bit and then we'd read Matthew and then we'd read Genesis. And
yes, you didn't get the full impact of what the messaging really was consistently through that. Huh.
No. So Syl was going down a real sharp hill to the abyss and I couldn't stop myself. It all fell apart. One thing after the other fell apart. I lost about 20 pounds. I was anorexic for 3 years.
Oh my goodness.
I was absolutely out of the world. It was cataclysmic for this person.
Wow, that is awful. I'm so sorry to hear that. But yeah, it was clearly a very deep thing that you were feeling to lose that faith.
Yeah. And I lost it. And then my sister said to me, one that's in the meeting, she says, well, I don't think you ever had it anyway. Oh, that really works well, doesn't it?
That is awful. And the listeners don't need to see the gesture I just gave to that person for saying that.
After killing myself.
After all the suffering and soul searching.
Well, you probably... And my brother said, an organization like this has really got no room for a woman like you. He said that? Yeah, I thought that was just so horrible at the time. And when I look back, I thought, you're right.
He was right. But also the fact that both of them said that when you were going through that just breaks my little heart for you.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I know I've heard that before from other people, like that similar kind of messaging. I know I've heard like, oh, I guess they didn't believe if they didn't stay.
That's right. Completely dismissive.
And that's why it's so interesting to hear about it from so many people who come on the podcast. When I'm like, did you get baptized? Did you believe it? And they're like, yeah, of course. I believed it since I was a little kid until I grew older and something changed. But there's so much invalidation from the Christadelphian community. And I think, again, it's just to protect themselves because then they can say, oh, that would never happen to us because I'm a real believer.
That's right.
I could never lose my faith like you. You must not be. I think it's the us versus them again, but it's insulating themselves. And again, unfortunately, that also means there's no empathy for you.
No. Oh, no empathy.
It's like, don't let the door hit you on the way out kind of energy. It's like, oh, you don't agree with us? Oh, then we're going to just be jerks to you now.
Well, they told everybody that not to have anything to do with me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yep. And yep.
Yeah, don't have anything to do with me.
And you were still married at the time, right? To your husband? So
Yeah.
how did...
Well, I left. And then 1 year later, he left the meeting. And
Okay.
that same year, he left me and the kids. And that's a sob story. Oh, and so there you are. Here's the sob story for all time, is I was left with no family because my family's all Christadelphian and they're now not.
They cut you off.
I have no socials, sort of set because they're all Christadelphians. They're told not to talk to me. And then my doggone husband leaves me. How's that for a sob story?
Yeah, all of that at once.
I left with 4 kids.
Wow. Yeah.
He's fine, and we're not together, but we're fine. And he had to go do what he had to do, too.
Okay.
So, anyway, that's what I did. But in terms of leaving, I left thoroughly. Thoroughly. I had a deep cataclysmic leaving. I left every belief system that I had. I left all the social things. I made those decisions as a grown person. I have to get out of here. This is not, I don't believe God is not after me because God doesn't exist as per what I ever thought. In fact, the world isn't what so the leaving was pretty thorough, really thorough. And I have never looked back for even a nanosecond.
Even a nanosecond.
No.
Awesome.
No.
Good to hear. And I, definitely feel you there. Can I ask, did you gravitate towards anything else with spirituality or community or anything like that after leaving?
I tried, because I was this person that wanted more humanity in my religion. And so I tried other Christian groups that appeared to, they knew how to sing. Remember? It's like, oh, I must love this because I can now sing without, the dirge of the.
It's not just funeral music vibes.
That's right. So that's really good, funeral music. So I did do that for a while, and then it was like, oh my gosh, their doctrine is even more hooped than ours was.
Okay,
so it's like, I can't believe that. Are you kidding me? Is that what you believe in? Like, so doctrinally, it was like, no.
Yeah.
Then I did my Buddhist time.
Okay.
Of course, I did. I did meditation, but then I started reading about Buddhism, and then I said, oh my gosh, do they really believe that?
Well, and I've also seen some groups like that are also like cults and stuff, and someone I follow online had to like escape one, and I was like, oh my God, like this is rough.
That's right.
So you still have to be careful even with the mindfulness-y groupies. Yeah.
I said, I got out of it. I'm not getting back into it. And each one of the different groups that I sort of played with, that didn't work. So, nope, I didn't. And I still don't have a group. No.
Okay, yeah. And that's okay to do your own thing, and whatever you feel day to day is fine. I was just curious if you gravitated towards, like, some people gravitate to like a hard atheism, some towards spirituality, some drift through a religion or two on their way out. Yeah. So it's interesting to see what people look for and what the experience related to that after leaving. Because at that point, it's just an open book. You can try any religion you want for the first time in your life.
So where I probably landed is I have children that are Indigenous children. And the Indigenous worldview that I can maybe explain in 2 sentences is that we are all alive. The entire creation is all alive. That we are all related. That humans and that the earth and the water and everything is somehow coming from that. The kind of all my relations kind of look at existence, that works for me. Works perfect for me.
I like it too.
It makes the world that I'm looking out at, it makes it make sense. So I'm into something that makes it make sense. I don't have to argue about it. It just gives me a sense, oh, okay, this makes, sort of humans and animals and, you know, pain, and so it makes it make sense, and I'm into it.
Yeah, I
So,
think the more native indigenous
yeah,
worldview around spirituality is so nature centric.
yeah.
So I really love it too. And I know, let me ask you, have you read Robin Wall Kimmerer's book, Braiding Sweetgrass?
Well, sort of, yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
because I remember I listened to the audiobook
yeah,
and I remember just loving it. And I feel like that's a
yeah.
good almost introductory to it just because she explains from a very plant centric point of view, as someone who's interested in plants in all their different ways. But I just remember lessons of like, you never take the first plant, you never take the last one, you always leave some, you ask permission. It was always like this respect to the earth,
Yeah.
of always leaving plenty for others, of sharing, of community. And that's why like they were the pioneers of sustainability, because it was never about taking it for yourself and like the greed of things. It was never about like being right, like a lot of religion is. It was always like, from my understanding, from what I've read and seen, of more focused on, we are all community, we are all part of the earth, and we give to the earth and we receive from the earth in equal measure. And I
That
think that's just so healthy.
that's it. You just did it. This is a fishing world out here,
Okay.
and my son has a fish net, which is a thing in indigenous world, is that you have a place where your people actually, that was their place to put a fish net into the ocean,
Okay.
and the fish nets have holes in them. Now that's just it.
Mm.
That's the indigenous worldview. It's you put out your
Mm-hmm.
fish net and you make sure there's a hole in it.
Yeah.
That is so great. I could teach Sunday school for the rest of my life. Just put out your fish net and make sure there's a hole in it. There are so many places that we can go with that very thing.
And that is the complete opposite of the culture I was raised in as a white person descended from white settlers in the very capitalistic society. What I hear about from what the people in my world do is they kill everything. And so they go out with their nets in these huge things, and ecosystems get damaged because they take everything. And a turtle will get caught in there, a dolphin will get caught in there, and they're like, too bad, we're just going to throw it overboard dead. We're going to, cut off the shark fin that we want and throw the shark over to
That's
die.
right.
Like, it's awful. It's heartbreaking. And I'm like, I hate that that's my culture I was raised in. Like, I don't agree with it personally, but that is the dominant culture. And that is how our society predominantly operates. And so, that's why I have so much respect for this indigenous worldview, because it touches my heart. That's what the society I'd want to live in. That's the society that makes sense to me.
And I'm really, really lucky,
Yeah.
fortunate, privileged, whatever word we're using these days, to have married into that world and to
Mm-hmm.
have children that actually totally believe that, and they teach that to
Mm-hmm.
their kids. And so
Oh.
that works for me too. They teach
Mm-hmm.
it to their mom, and I like, yeah, I'm cool with that. That
Oh, that's
that
so
works.
nice.
That works for me.
It sounds like a beautiful ending to having left, is that your kids did not end up growing up with that
Oh my God, I'm
Christadelphian
so
view of,
glad.
I'm better than everyone, I have this, I'm going to show it down your throat. It sounds like instead, I love that they finally got back to their roots, because they didn't go Catholic and
No,
they didn't go Christadelphian,
no,
but they went back further than that.
yeah.
And I love that's now going down another generation to their children too.
So I have two things to say about that. If
Okay.
we're wrapping up, my granddaughter's here. I run a lodge on this
Okay.
fabulous little island. My husband and I on this
You're on an
fabulous,
island?
a tiny wee island with 400 people, and we run
Oh,
a lodge. And
I want to visit.
it is the coolest place. It's beside Vancouver Island. It's in the Gulf.
Oh, I absolutely want to visit. Yeah, yeah.
21, yeah, no, it's just fabulous. My 21-year-old granddaughter comes to help us clean it.
Okay.
And she's here today. And I said, gotta be quiet, because I'm going to go down there and I'm going to record this thing. So don't come screaming around looking for me. And she said, well, what is it? And I said, it's a podcast about, being an ex-Christy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, Grandma. She doesn't mind saying God. Oh my God, Grandma, you tell them that I am so thankful that you did that. And
Oh,
that I get to be raised an independent woman that can go and do whatever I want to do. You tell them that, Grandma.
I love it.
So
Oh, I love it, love it,
that's
love it.
from my rock star granddaughter. She's a rock singer. So
She's
um,
amazing. Agreed. Love her.
that's pretty cool. And then one other thing I got to say about that, because I'm back to my family. I have a pretty powerful family. My children.
Okay.
Um, when I was my son was turning 14, 15, 16, and the Christies were eyeing him because he was going to be a star. He knew how to talk, he knew how to think, he was
Charisma.
charismatic. And I looked at him and said, I will hate you. I can't even stomach the thought of you turning into a big man in this tiny wee world because you are too big for that and it is going to be awful. And that was a real kind of push for me, is like, I cannot
Mm-hmm.
let
Wow.
him, because,
Become that.
and you know what, he turned into a politician.
Is that a
Oh,
good thing or a bad thing?
well, he was it for 16 years. He was a green politician.
Okay. Okay. Just checking where we went.
No, and
Okay.
he would talk about his indigenous beliefs in the legislature.
Okay. So he's great. Okay.
He quit now. He just quit. But
Okay.
they were right. He
Yeah.
was a big personality,
He
right?
had that, yeah, in him. He
And
could
so
have been the
now,
top tier brother in
yeah,
the meeting.
oh, can you imagine?
But it can get really toxic at the top, and the control and aggression that comes with being in that environment, having so much power and so much say in this small pond. You can be such a big fish, and it's really terrible for them.
It's
ugh.
terrible.
Like, you were a good person. Now I don't want to even talk to you. Like, oof.
So
No.
my son ended up being a little fish in a big pond instead of a big fish in a little pond. So
And
much
that's
better.
okay. Yeah.
As a mother, that's what you want.
Yeah, it's healthier for them.
Yep. And he's done with it. And he says, I've done that. That's good. And I'll go on and do something else. But yeah, so
that's okay.
yeah. That was one of the things that I would look at and think, oh, like my girls, not so much. They're not going to be anything in there anyway, right?
That's exactly it. Like, there's no pressure on them except like, oh, did you marry Christadelphian? Are you having Christadelphian babies soon? Like, you're 19. When's your first baby coming?
That's right. So, but for the son, you really do. It's exactly what you just said. It's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if they end up being, really good, like I would have had a lot of trouble with that. Anyway, my granddaughter said that to you and to the crowd. And
it's much appreciated.
My children have also said, thank you very much, Mom. Thank you. You went through it. It sucked, but we're not there.
You did it.
We're off doing what we're doing. And good job, Mom. So there.
Yeah, by freeing yourself, you made the path for them to have their freedom too, which is really beautiful.
Yeah.
And like you said, it was not easy, and it was lonely, and it was rough. But you did it.
Yeah, that's my story.
It's a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. Are there any positives that you still attribute in your life to having been part of the Christadelphians earlier in your life?
It might not be so much the meeting or the Christies, but my family that raised me around a table where we always debated.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you just pull the religion out of that, that formed me. That really was a key part of becoming who I am. That's still me. I'm still that person. So I'll sit around a table and read something, and then I'll have 5 opinions of it with you, and we'll walk away as friends, because that's what our family did. And even though they would have great debates, it was within this sort of safe space.
So you're able to speak up, speak your mind, make opinions, and express them in a kind way. It sounds like is like a skill.
But when I left, my family was not happy, and my father and I screamed at each other for about probably a year. Just screamed at each other because he loved me, and I had broken his heart. And he screamed and screamed and argued and argued and screamed and argued, and I screamed and screamed back at him and argued and argued. And then I said to him, we won't do this anymore. I'm not coming over to do this. So I'm your daughter. I'm coming if you stop. If you stop nailing me with your doctrine and your stuff, if you don't stop, I got your, 3 grandchildren, 4 now. So I had 4 kids. I said, you won't
Mm-hmm.
see them. And we're not arguing like this anymore. I did what I did. I believe it. So bye.
Mm-hmm.
And my beautiful father just embraced it.
Wow. Okay. So you set the boundary and it was fortunately able to help repair that relationship so you could still see him. Okay.
My mother and my father and I had a great relationship right till he died. And you know what he said when he died? My dad died of multi-system failure, which meant that he was in the hospital for several weeks, just dying.
And all the organs shut down. Yeah.
Just gracefully dying. And he said to my children, you need to know how proud I am of your mother. She did the right thing. True story. He said that. He said it to me too, but he said it to all 3 of my children.
If you did the right thing.
He said it. My father was like a Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob fanatic. So
did he feel that he had been wrong or that it was just right for you?
I don't know, because then he died.
Wow, what a cliffhanger.
You can make up the rest of the story.
Someone get some fanfic for our podcast. Tell me how it ends.
So, honestly, but it was such a heartfelt. It was, that's what he said. And there will be people that are listening to this that know who he is.
Yeah.
Because he was a big personality, huge personality.
Okay.
To know that at the end, that was it. That's how he felt about it. So we had a good relationship, though, long before that happened. He let me off the hook. He never raised religious stuff again to me, ever. We didn't have that. That wasn't our conversation.
That's awesome that you're able to move past that and have just a human connection, just have a family connection without it being conditional on acceptance of a doctrine.
Just with my mom and dad, not so much with the rest of my family.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So there you go. And I wrote books. I've written lots and lots of books. And my family, they're not interested in my books. Women are not supposed to write books or something. I'm not sure what it is. But
can you tell me what were the books? Were they history books or what were they about? I
started by writing kids' books. And I wrote lots of kids' books, novels, all kinds of kids' books.
I didn't know that. That's so cool.
Yeah. So lots of them. And my father was the only one in my family that read them. And he read them, and he was so proud. And it was right at the beginning of my writing career, because I didn't start writing till late.
I'm glad he was supportive. He was like,
I'd love to write a book. Maybe we can write a book together. And it was like my dad was all over it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my books, I wrote lots after he went, but he was at the beginning of it. I write essays and history and travel and all kinds of stuff.
Very cool. If you have a website that you'd be willing to share, let me know if that has some of your works on it, or if there's anything you want to put in the show notes. Happy to share that. Yeah,
I have sort of a crappy little website that I don't spend any time on, but it does. My books and stuff are on it, and some stuff.
Yeah, it could be a good one to have. Yeah, the other thing is I want to hear about your blog, because I know that you've posted every once in a while something in the Ex-Christadelphian Facebook page. Do you feel comfortable talking about that here on the podcast?
Yeah, I'm a writer, and I've over the years I'm always writing, and I'm just going to start a new book, and I write and I write and I write, but I wake up in the morning with some bee in my bonnet, and so I write it. And I did go through a time where numbers of them were about Christadelphians, and I want to write a book called The Zealot's Daughter. I do, because my dad was the ultimate zealot. I mean, he was a crazy zealot, and I'm the daughter of a zealot. So that book is around for me to write. So I've written little glimpses, little sparks of that on my blog from time to time. But if you read my blog, I also write about knitting, and I write about the lodge that I run, and I write about
I love both of those.
My career.
Is your granddaughter making an Instagram for you that I can follow too?
No, she doesn't.
Oh, come on. I want to see the lodge.
That's fabulous. It's really cool.
Did you knit the sweater you're wearing?
Yeah, of course I did.
See, you're awesome. I love this. Beautiful cardigan.
In this lodge, there is knitting everywhere.
I have to visit. I have to.
And I'm running a knitting workshop in April where we're going to recycle sheets.
Oh, that's interesting.
I know.
Right now,
Right?
I'm just working on some fingerless gloves with this
Oh,
beautiful, like hand-dyed yarn from a small company. It's
there.
beautiful. Oh, loving it.
Yeah. And then there's knitting. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll see that on my website. Yeah.
Okay. And then could we just tie up another loose end of your education? So after leaving, what was the path with that made you eventually become a historian?
Well, part of my leaving really was around. Wait a minute, Christie's. There's this whole population of people called Indigenous people
Mm-hmm.
that aren't even in your prophecy. They're not even on
Yep.
your table. You don't even like them. Like, wait a minute, I live with them.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, hang on, hang up here. Like, and I'm a Canadian,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like, come on, Canada, you're not any better than the Christies. Like, you have done one nasty job of your relationship with Indigenous people. Your
Mm-hmm.
country, even worse. If
Yeah, it's not good.
oh,
It's brutal, the history with American.
yeah. So that was what I was living with every day, and
Mm-hmm.
I had lots of questions about it. So I went in sort of around the same time as I was leaving the church. I went back to university. I didn't graduate, but if you're old in Canada in those days, you didn't have to qualify. You could just go to university, and they just let you in to sink or
So they
swim.
didn't make you get like a GED or
No,
anything?
no, I
Okay.
didn't get any GED. I didn't
Okay.
finish anything. I just went, and it's kind of like sink or swim. You're old, and yeah. So
About how old were you at the time then? Weren't you around 40 something when you left?
yeah, 38 maybe,
Okay.
38, 39. And I swam. University was
Okay.
so easy for me, and for anybody who has spent their life reading the Bible every day twice
Mm-hmm.
and debating it. That's all you do in university is read stuff and debate it. So it really, and
Okay.
so I had one question for university. What the hell, Canada? What the hell have you done over the last however many 100 years with Indigenous people? And so I have spent years in university and working and deliberating that. I wrote a travel book about it and with Canada, traveling across Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's what I do. And so university, that's where I went just as I was leaving the meeting. I was back at first year university asking my questions. The meeting did not answer my questions. I used to say when
Mm-hmm.
I left, the meeting doesn't answer my questions, but worse than that, the meeting doesn't even ask the right questions. So I'm
Agree. Yeah.
not really going to find the answers.
No.
I'm going to find somewhere that asks the right questions.
Mm-hmm.
And Christie's don't ask the right questions. Not for me
No.
at all.
Well, I think that's also discouraged in general. Like, not explicitly. It's just if you ask the wrong questions, you're in trouble. So why ask any questions at all?
That's right. So I was just in my glory. I was at university, and you could ask any question you want.
Yeah, exactly. You can finally, it's not taboo where there's like, oh, if I say that, what will they think of me? Because there's a lot of like status and politics kind of in the background. You know, in Steve's episode, he talked about having to take a class for a year privately because they were like punishing him for asking a question about Revelation. And so like it really did happen where it could be a bit punitive socially or, you know, in other ways to ask the wrong question.
Mind you, at university right now, they can be kind of punitive too if you ask the wrong questions.
Yeah.
But I'm a thinker, and I'll think through that too, so that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what university. So I went, I did a bachelor's, and then I went back and I did a master's degree, and then I went back again because I ended up having a career in sort of in housing and administration. So I went back and did that, and then in 2000 and whatever, 10, I said I need to do a big project, and I think I'll do it through the university. So I did a PhD dissertation, and then I graduated in 2016.
That's pretty cool. Congratulations, doctor.
Old woman. I know. It's good.
See, and what a role model for your kids too. Imagine, like, and just your parents were happy to have you not even finish school, just be a quiet Christadelphian wife, and then here you are growing up with these incredible kids, and you're just leading the way with so much education, so much free thinking. It's just so cool to see how that changed. And you did that really yourself, because it wasn't like they were pushing you like, oh, you should be more than this, Sylvia. You have so much skill and smarts. Instead, they're like, no, just stay small, and like getting mad at you for trying to leave and like kind of outgrow your shell, you know?
Absolutely. There was no encouragement to grow as a woman. I hope today, but in my era, no. That's not right for a woman.
I was glad that at least one time my grandmother had been a secretary when my mom worked before she became a homemaker. She had worked as a secretary. And one time I had made a comment. I was like, oh, maybe I'll be a secretary. And she's like, no, you need to do more than that. You're not going to be a secretary like me and my mother were. She's like, you are smarter than that. So I was at least glad to have that. And they were supportive when I enrolled in college and university. But I know that's not the case for everyone. And there's a lot of brothers especially who will still say, oh, a woman's place is in the home, it's with the kids. But I think it's also becoming less practical with my generation too. So I think that some of it's falling away as women have to work and people can see that we're competent with it.
And I am a different generation than that.
Yeah,
I am.
Because I remember hearing like a few generations ago, it was like you're a teacher, a nurse, or a secretary. And like it was so limited what women could be.
Yeah, that's right. And if a woman happens to be intellectually inclined, that's not only not encouraged, it's frowned upon, because that's where you really step out of your place. Like, who do you think you are?
Have you forgotten that men are supposed to be the ones speaking and having the power?
Oh, I got a story about that too. Oh, this isn't a cool story, and it might make me sound, I don't care what it makes me sound like. I'm old. I can sound like anything. But I used to have these great debates with the men, right? Because the women didn't have them. So something, whatever it is, some idea, something, because I always have these big ideas, blah, 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 to some my friends, right? My male friends. And then I would go on Sunday morning. This really wouldn't wash very well in Christadelphian circles. Anyway, I would go on Sunday morning and I would hear what I had to say being fed back to me through an exhortation. And I'd be like, that's not. And then after the exhortation, I would say to him, that's not really what I said. You kind of screwed that up.
I could have done it better.
I know. And I was so appalled.
And they didn't give you credit, did they? They didn't give you credit? Mm-hmm.
I was the author of these many ideas that had to be filtered through my friends who, presented them there. Fine.
As if they were their own.
It was just so bad. So bad.
Yeah, and women still complain about that in meetings where they'll say something and then a guy will say it after them and people be like, oh, wow, great idea, so-and-so. And they're like, excuse me, I just said that. Stop ignoring me. That's right. And I told them, I remember telling the arranging brothers, I get it. You guys have to, figure out these talks that you have to give. And that's a big thing. That's hard work. But I have to sit through them. And if you're going to steal my ideas, why not just put me right up on the podium anyways? Like, let's just cut out the middleman here. Yeah. I finally got an evil giggle out of you. So that's the story of a woman who didn't fit in. A woman beyond her time. Yeah. I was just, a little bit past my era, I think. Yeah, I think you were just, a new kind of woman coming into that situation. That's right. And lots of us were. In the world, there was lots of me's. I wasn't exceptional, but in the Christadelphians,
because it's such a small group, you make a big wave.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Yeah.
even if you're not making a wave, it doesn't fit because the group's too small to make room for you.
Yeah. They don't want any splashing, even if it's not a wave.
That's right. Yep.
Wow.
So that's right. So
Mm-hmm. Wow. So much to think about. You've had some amazing stories. Thank you for sharing all of those. So what led you to join the Ex-Christadelphian Facebook?
I think that's a couple of things. I think that's a really important Facebook page to have. I read what people are thinking, so that you often, when you leave, you think you're the big center of the universe, and you find out, well, you're not. There's all these people that are doing the same kind of thing, and that's really good. I'm really interested in what they're saying. I really understand how delegitimized ex-Christies are. People who are in don't think that we have any right to have any say. And I've had those discussions with some Christadelphians, and they say, well, I don't even know why you're saying that, because you're not part of it anyway. It's like, no,
again, just shutting you down.
It is our story. That's your story. You're still in. That's cool.
Yeah.
You tell that story. I'm cool with that. I don't tell you not to. Don't tell me not to.
Yeah, we're entitled to our own stories.
That's right. And I mean, I was in it for 40 years. So I'm interested in how that story has created us, has created you, has created me. And some people in that group are still really, really troubled, really troubled. And I think if I can do something in there, I can just legitimate that, it's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And as my granddaughter would say, and it's a lot.
That's true. That's true. For a lot of people, it's a lot. And it's almost funny when people are like, oh yeah, it wasn't really traumatic for me. It was overall pretty good. I'm like, wow. Because for so many people, both within the group and a number of people on the podcast, there was a lot of hardship that came along with it, in so many different ways. But it had a big impact, especially, for most people being raised in it all during your developmental years. A lot of it's with your family, so it can really complicate, the foundation of your relationships that you have that make you feel secure and stable and loved. It can be really life-changing having been a member of the group. But you almost think about how, I think part of them not wanting us to talk about our stories is to try to keep themselves feeling legitimate. Because again, I think it's probably afraid of what we'll say if we speak up. Whether that's their members hearing it or just them not liking it because they don't have control over it, and control is a big thing for them, so it makes sense that it's not necessarily even about you. I think, again, it's like the other comment the person had made, where it's like, can you just shut up and stop causing problems for us? I don't want to have any doubts, and I don't want to hear about that you had them. I don't want to hear that you had a bad experience with something.
Yeah, and I get that, and that's okay, except that this is our story, and that's okay too. And actually, I think a lot of ex-Christadelphians turn into being pretty strong-minded people, because if you have to rethink your entire life, I rethought and relived and refelt and resmelt and retouched, and everything about the world that I knew to be true was gone. That is profound. It was, I was in a world I had no idea what it was about. I would reach out and touch somebody, and it would be the outsider, the insider. That I remember going by a little river when I was protesting up at our clear cuts, and I always believed with all my heart that Jesus was going to come back and clean up those rivers. And I went up and sat in a sludge river, and I bawled and bawled and bawled because I thought, he's not.
Yeah.
And this river is not going to be magically returned to some bubbling stream. It's a pile of sludge. So for weeks after that, I could barely breathe. I was
you're just mourning it. It's grief.
Throwing up, sick. And so changing your entire world, not even just your worldview, the whole imagination of what it is
Your
to be
hope.
alive.
Yeah, your
To be
relationship to the world.
yes, to be a person, to be a woman, and on
Yeah.
and on and on. That is a thing. And
Yeah,
as
it's like
Maddie
an
said,
identity crisis.
it's a lot.
Yes, it's a lot.
So those of us who have done that need to celebrate that we have done an extremely powerful thing. And I'm old now, and I've studied people and studied all sorts of things, and I look and say, what other people in the world have done that? And there are people,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
it's not a common thing to do, not to so
Mm-hmm.
intensely change your world.
And it's easier
Some
not to.
things, like I just got my hair cut, I can change that,
Yeah,
but change the entire nature of you and the world is huge. And
it's a
that's what
lot
we
of
did.
effort. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah. So that's how I see it. And I think that I've told the Christies that they should have exit interviews with us so that they could improve their gig, because we've got
Mm-hmm.
things that are useful to say, but everything you just said is true. They don't want. Of course they don't. Of course they don't. Why would they? And that's okay.
Yeah,
I'm
and it's a
quite happy that
shame.
they do what they do. I don't have any animosity towards them.
Yeah, they're allowed to do that, for them. But it is a shame that that's part of their culture, is the rigidity of it, perhaps.
Yeah.
Just because, like, sometimes we'll mention, like, oh, this is kind of a problem we've seen, and a lot of people are seeing it. That'd be great if they improve that for the benefit of their members. But I don't think that would be well received, even from within, if someone reported back and was like, oh, we've got some feedback. And they'll be like, why would we change? We have the truth. We have the way of looking at the world. That's obviously perfect. Why would we change it?
This is not a monkey wrench to put in this whole conversation, but looking at the world that we have, and my family have said, don't you wish you're still in? And
because the world is terrible.
Yeah. And I say, okay. Yeah, you know what? I do. I would love to cycle back to my naive believing in complete fabrications.
You would be less uncomfortable. It would feel good to be that naive again.
I know. Imagine if we could believe that stuff.
It'd be great. I'd have less stress, but I'm very stressed. Yeah.
I could tell my grandchildren, no worries. Just get baptized and you're good to go.
That's all you have to do is read your Bible, get baptized, go to meeting every week. Check, check, check.
Gosh. Check, check, check. And all you got to do is say, too bad for those poor slobs that don't understand what we understand. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So there you go. So true story is that there is lots of reasons why people who believe that stuff do not want to let it go.
Yeah.
Because it makes life so simple.
It does.
Simple. And I'm looking at the world and thinking, I get it.
It's complicated.
Simple people are actually doing and saying things to try to mitigate their fears right now.
Absolutely agree.
Christies are, they fill that bill. They do. But it's the fact that it's not true. The fact
that is a problem for some people who realize that and are willing to look at that.
Yeah. For me, it's like, but it's not even true. So like no,
it's not worth it for me.
None.
Yeah. I think the discomfort of knowing it's wrong is too much compared to the comfort of the emotional needs it meets of trying to help you feel better and live in the world more calmly.
Because it's not there for me at all. This idea, I think probably for you too, when I was young, well, you take the wide road that leads to perdition or whatever the word was, and you take the narrow, hard road to lead to, no, guys, no. Your road is so simple. It's like eating pablum. It's like being fed. It's stuff you don't even have to chew. And you don't really even have to swallow.
It's not even really a road. It's just a hamster wheel. It just goes around and around the same thing. It's not, you're not getting anywhere.
That's right. So that is not the hard road, guys. The hard road is living with real.
It is hard. I would say that's something that I've really thought about a lot, is that emotionally it was easier to just be able to dismiss things, to just tune out the news and the politics and just be able to ignore it and say, oh, it's God's will, so I don't have to even care about it.
So
You know,
easy.
yeah, you just dismiss so much. But then nowadays it's like, oh no, I care about that. And I recognize that Jesus isn't going to come down and change it. God's not going to come down and change it. So no, it's up to me and people like me around the world to care and to do something. And that is a lot harder.
That
And
is.
to suffer when that doesn't happen,
It
too.
is. Absolutely. I think we need to really, really give ourselves, I don't know, credit. I don't give myself credit, but it is
But to
really,
recognize it, yeah.
yeah, we really need to recognize that leaving that simplistic explanation of the world. And
Mhm.
you know what else I had to leave is I had to leave being right.
Yeah. Now we have to
Uh-oh.
live in that nuance of
Oh,
growing and
oh,
being wrong sometimes.
not right.
Yeah.
Oh, that is like so hard to get your head around when, when you've been right for so
Yeah.
long.
Or so you thought.
I know. Oh my gosh, this sucks. But it evaporated for me, so there was no going back. It
And I
doesn't
think
exist. It doesn't
and
exist.
also losing that high that you could get from faith, because I think that on top of the simple view of the world is like, I have so few things I have to worry about because it's all in God's hands. And then you go and you're singing and you're meeting people who are being friendly to you because you all believe the same thing. And like you would feel good. And it was nice to go somewhere and just feel good. And you're in this community and God loves you. And you, like, I remember different times where I felt that way and
Yeah.
it felt good. And so you had that. And now I'm like, oh, that doesn't happen like that anymore. Like, I'm down here. It's a different, like, you can get a runner's high, you can get a dancing high, you can get those, but I'm not getting the faith high anymore. It's changed.
That's right. And I'm not so high on myself anymore either. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, where did that
Men-
girl go? Yeah.
Mentally,
So
it's very different. You have a very different feeling around spirituality. You can't get that nice feeling of being like, oh, it feels so good to feel right and so connected and God loves me so much and I feel like everything's going to be okay. And I'm like, no, things might not be okay. And I have to live with that every day.
that's right. That's right. That's right. And that's, yeah, it's funny, whoever you are and wherever you know, behind your mic, and here I am, this person from wherever. And that experience is really common. We get it. I
Yeah.
totally get it. It's funny.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. There's so many commonalities with us, you know, not just at like things we experience with how like ecclesias and we're set up, but also the emotions we went through as members, the emotions we went through as leaving, a lot of the experiences we went through and things that, you know, just think about the Ex-Christadelphian Facebook group. How many times has someone new come in and they've been like, I finally have a safe space where I can talk about this. And then 10 people are like, oh my God, that happened to me too. Or I'm so sorry for you. You know, I can relate. And there's always someone who's like, yes, I've been there too. And I get that it's hard right now. And I hope that you have support to get through this because it is hard. You know, just validating that because we've been there.
So now what we need is we need the Life After Leaving podcast. I put on a ex-Christie weekend here in Victoria.
I would love that.
About 12 people came. And it's like our very own Bible school, right? Except they were all ex-Christies. But we were a mixed bag of people. We were a very mixed
Yeah,
bag.
very different. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so, but it would be fun. It would be fun if somewhere in the mid country, somewhere, you know, in my world, it would be sort of Toronto. And somebody actually put together a 3 or 4 days and have people talking and have people presenting and have different topics and have discussion groups, and it would be fun. It would be lots of fun.
I could definitely see that, especially learning more about people now that I'm actually having these longer conversations with people instead of just Facebook comments with people. It's cool to see the experience and skills that people have. I could see us having a good group of people potentially who could do that.
Yep.
And a lot of people who could need that and have like the journal sessions for us to talk about it, like process what we felt from the groups and build connections just like we used to when we're like bunking together and talking at night and stuff. It would be so cool. And I know people kind of want that. I informally met up with Heather and Katura in person because I hadn't met them in person. We're all on the East Coast. So we were able to make that happen. And we're like, this is so cool. And I could see other people. It's popped up every once in a while now in the Ex-Christadelphian Facebook group. They're like, we want to have like a meetup. The hard part is that we're all over the world.
Yeah.
You know,
because so many of them are Australian and
yeah,
English.
the majority of listeners, at least just this podcast, and I think we've done polls in the group too, are Australians. So Australians could easily set something up, I think, for themselves. They have the numbers, absolutely. And then like the UK and the US combined are probably as many listeners as the Australians. And some Canadians next after that.
Yeah. Well, we just don't have as many. We're a lot smaller, but we would go wherever the Americans like in terms of location.
If anyone wants to help arrange a North American ex-Christadelphian, I don't even know how we'd brand it. Yeah, ex-Bible school.
Ex-Bible school. That's right.
The music will be fun.
Yeah. If somebody would come that was good at music, there would be musicians.
Yeah, people really are networking a lot now that we've got the podcast going. Yeah, I've definitely become a hub, but I don't know if I'd be able to take it on myself, but if I would be happy to collaborate with anyone who would be willing to take on that project, and I'd be interested in attending.
Yeah. Well, if there's a bunch of people that want to do that, I would do that too. Heck, I put on Bible schools. I know how to do that.
Oh, I would love it. And please have a knitting night where we can knit together.
That's right.
Because it doesn't have to be just about the Bible all day every night. We can actually do fun things too.
I doubt it would be about the Bible all the time. No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I feel like I'd love to have like some morning discussions and stuff, but I feel like it could also be cool to have like more somatic stuff, like doing like the yoga, mindfulness kind of stuff, have free time where it's just about connecting with who you are as well. So like maybe you could have interest groups like, hey, a group wants to go hiking, go do that and chat and just be together. It doesn't have to be sitting and being inside all the time with the Bible in your lap anymore, but engaging with each other.
And we definitely need a comedian there.
I love it.
There's lots to be comedic about.
Yeah, we'd have to be able to have fun with it. So maybe we could do a movie night with a very not Christadelphian friendly movie. Find something like Book of Mormon-esque kind of vibes too. I think would be a good movie night. Yeah. We've got ideas, people.
Let's have some fun. Okay.
All right. Do you have any advice that you would want to give someone who's considering leaving or has recently left?
When I left, I did not try to convince anybody. It was such a disruptive and painful and hard thing for me. I thought, ooh, if you're taking the journey of leaving, if you've been as deeply involved in it as some of us, like I said, it's in the DNA, you have to do it because you have to do it. There was my moment was my friend said, aren't you afraid leaving? Aren't you afraid? And I said, actually, I'm leaving now because I'm more afraid of staying. I used to be afraid of leaving, and now I'm more afraid of staying. So that's when you can go. And so you really have to be in that state where you really have to do it. It is not for the faint of heart. That's what my mother would have said. It's not for the faint of heart. It isn't. It's powerful.
I agree.
It's huge.
It's not easy. Yeah.
So if you're into it, find people that are going to help you through it. But it's not something that I would ever encourage somebody to do. I wouldn't. It has to come from the inside of somebody.
Mm-hmm. I think that's very good perspective there. Absolutely. I think that's all of my questions today. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about today that we didn't get to?
No, that was fun.
I thought that was great.
Those were good questions. That was a good time.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks again for coming on the podcast and being so open and sharing your story and so many fun stories. I really hope that I get to meet you in person one day and tell your granddaughter she's awesome for me. And for all of our listeners out there, that's all for today. So thank you for listening again, and stay tuned for our next episode. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone who helped make this episode of the podcast possible. Today's episode was edited by me, Zinnia.
I'd also like to thank my cat for her meowing in the background.
L. Kroons for our intro music, and the Ex-Christadelphians who submitted audio for the intro music. Thank you. If you'd like to join our community, you can find us at A Group for Ex-Christadelphians on Facebook. If you're a fan of the show, you can follow us on social media on Facebook or Instagram at Life After Leaving Podcast. If you'd like to come on the podcast, please reach out to me at lifeafterleavingpodcast@gmail.com. And if you're enjoying this podcast, please consider leaving a rating or sharing this podcast with a friend. That's all for today. Thanks, and see you next time.